So the Bad Batch is coming in about 2 weeks, and I cannot even explain to you how excited I am. Mostly because, I don't know, even in the comics, they don't really explain the clones' journey to their extinction, you know? Even in Legends, we all know that Palpatine replaced the clones with normal human recruits. However, now we get to see through the Bad Batch what actually happened. What was the process where it went from Order 66, the prime of the clones, to now being wiped out completely by an empire that had no use for them anymore. We've all discussed how the clones will be wiped out and how their process of creation will practically cease. In the Darth Vader comic series, we get to see one of the last batches of clones that were just introduced to the Empire. In fact, Jedi Knight Bar even executes Order 66 on these new batches that were fresh meat, green, and had not experienced that order as of yet. This is why Bar actually turned the tables on the Inquisitors, who were former Jedi, and pit the clones against the Inquisitors. Even more proof why Palpatine eventually decided to stop the reproduction of clones. They could easily be manipulated at this point, and who could tell what the clones were capable of. But even though in the comics we get to see this last batch of clones that became Vader's troopers, basically, the Bad Batch kind of told us who the last clone to ever be produced, and I think that that is Omega. I think that the Bad Batch coming on May 4th will present Omega as the final clone trooper that was made from the Jango Fett template. Just as the Clone Wars series, the Bad Batch will continue to explore the humanity of the clone troopers. Just as the Republic became now the Empire, these troopers were eventually phased out in favor of stormtroopers. The Bad Batch themselves are elite clone commandos with mutations that favored the Empire and the Republic as well. This is what made them formidable against any opponent. They used their disadvantage to their advantage. If Omega is the last clone of Jango Fett, however, she also has a mutation or modification that sets her apart from every other clone similar to the Bad Batch. As we all know, all the clone troopers are grown from the DNA of Jango Fett, a Mandalorian bounty hunter who was considered the deadliest and greatest in the galaxy. But as explained by the Prime Minister Lama Su in the Clone Wars episode Clone Cadets, Jango's death resulted in his DNA needing to be stretched to produce more clones, leading to instances of mutations or other imperfections. While the Bad Batch clones were all deemed useful by the Kaminoans and the Republic at the time, some clones, like for example 99, could not join the Grand Army of the Republic, and as a result they were given non-combat roles due to their mutations. So in the case of 99, his mutations were a disadvantage and actually excluded him from the glory of war, something that the clones were bred for. Of course, the other thing we know that as embryos, all these clones were given a control chip implant to override their free will and compel them to kill ultimately their Jedi allies once Order 66 was to be executed by Palpatine. In the Bad Batch trailer, however, we clearly see Omega sharing some facial features with other clone cadets and resembles a lot like a little Boba Fett. She wears a similar uniform to the cadets, and to add to that, she has a pendant that's identical to the one worn by Nala Se, a Kaminoan and one of the primary engineers of the Jango clones. While accents are not actually hereditary, I mean, most clone troopers sound like their template Jango. Omega, though, does speak with a similar accent to the Jango clones, a kind of a New Zealand accent, so further indicating that she is definitely and ultimately a Jango clone. Now, the question here is whether Omega is an intentional modification by the Kaminoans or accidental mutation, because Omega appears to be the first female clone of Jango Fett. We have never seen this before. This is why, if there was a mutation before, we might have come across it during the Clone Wars series, or in the movies, but for the simple fact that we never do, this leads a lot of people to believe that the Kaminoans experimented with the Jango clones, ultimately coming to Omega, who now is a female clone, something that we have not seen before. To make matters even more grandiose and for us to understand how significant is the character Omega in the Bad Batch, her name, Omega itself, is a letter or a sign that often signifies finality, implying that she is the last clone trooper that was grown from Jango Fett's template. This would mean, ladies and gentlemen, that not only will we see the last clone ever to be produced in the Bad Batch series, but the last clone was a female, giving us a completely different perspective from the clone troopers. All we have seen throughout the Clone Wars series was the brothers in arms, fighting alongside each other, having the time of their lives, fighting for what they were bred for. But now this female clone trooper could enhance the viewing experience even more. We know the male side, now it's time for the female side of these clone troopers, and this is why the Bad Batch series in general is very exciting for every Star Wars fan, and more specifically every Clone Wars fan that wants to see something completely different from this series. Of course, we talked earlier about Darth Vader, the 2018 Darth Vader comic series, and the final batches of the Jango Fett clone troopers were grown, trained, and brainwashed into Imperial service rather than the Galactic Republic, becoming the first of the Empire's elite Purge troopers. These Purge troopers accompanied Imperial Inquisitors in their hunt for the Jedi who survived Order 66, and they ultimately attacked Dak City. If Omega is actually the last Jango clone, this most likely would have been her fate as well, but fortunately we see her tag along with the Bad Batch in the trailer. Now, exactly how Omega and the Bad Batch clones removed their chips or otherwise resisted Order 66 is yet to be seen in the series itself, but by escaping Kamino, Omega basically avoids her dark fate of becoming a mindless drone similar to the other clones that remained on Kamino. Ultimately, it is something that a lot of fans are excited for, including myself, and I would love to know, what do you guys think about this character Omega, and what do you expect from the series as a whole? Guys, talk to me down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, leave a thumbs up down below, subscribe for dailies. Now you can have an awesome day, Star Wars fans. I'll see you in the next video, and may the Force be with you until then.